I'm going to go ahead and add in Frank here. Hi, Frank.
Hi, Katie. How are
It's
you?
so nice to meet you.
Same here.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Dystonia awareness is very important,
Yes, and I'm
especially
so glad
for
so glad
especially
you're
for
able to.
right.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're able to join us. So Frank just let me know that he's in Pennsylvania. What time is it there, Frank?
1 o'clock.
All right, so a little bit in the afternoon, a bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell them a little bit about you, and you can clarify anything if I mess anything up.
Okay.
So Frank served in the Navy band as a woodwind instrumentalist over a 15-year career. He graduated with honors from Berklee College of Music, and he was a member of the Berklee's famed Rainbow Band under the direction of Phil Wilson. He studied with Joe Viola and studied jazz musicianship with the master jazz teacher Adolph Sandal. Um, so, can you tell us a little bit about that as well, like your background? I know that I kind of summarized it, but if you want to go in a little more detail, we'd love to hear about it.
Well, music was my whole life essentially. That's all. That's basically all I ever did. I was always sometimes the dystonia affects my speech. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get going a little bit with it. But most of my life, I was like the the youngest one in my class, and I learned to read music before I read English. My grandfather was a musician. My mother played piano, and they came around at school in the third grade with the song flutes, and I was the only one who knew how to read music. So they put me in the saxophone right off the bat, which what my grandfather played. Like a week later, I was playing a solo for the school, and that's all I ever did was after that was the saxophone, and I went to double, had to play clarinet, and I hated it, so grabbed a flute and locked myself away for a day and learned to play the flute, and that's what I did. I did the Navy band for a few years, but before the Navy, I was in the Army band for several years. Got out and went, and that's when I studied with Adolph. Those who don't know, Adolph Sandoli was a master teacher. Him and his brother Dennis were responsible for they taught a lot of people in the Philadelphia, New York area. James Moody, Fat Martino, Coltrane. They had a huge thing with him. You had a what Adolph did was gave you a little 8 measure line. You had to play it in every key, and you had
Wow.
and this guy was so sharp. My first week that I went to him, I had 8 keys memorized. I had 4 to go, so I wrote out the last 4 keys, and I went and I memorized it that way. And I went in my lesson, and on the way out the door, he says, "Oh, by the way, don't write out the last 4 keys." He could tell I was using my eyes and not my ears to play. That's how sharp he was. So it was just amazing. So I had a lot of good experiences as a musician, and it was for a long time I had given up the saxophone and just was primarily as a flute player. And I was in my early 20s. I had a young son, and I had a opportunity to attend another college. I auditioned for Stony Brook College, and the instructor was Sam Barron, the flute teacher at Juilliard in Manhattan. He told me he'd take me either one of those schools, but I decided to go back in. I needed to work, so I went in the Navy as a saxophone player. So I dusted off the horn and came and got in as a saxophone player. But Navy was a great career. The military is a great career for a musician. It's like if you want to look at it like say like baseball, which I miss. I'm a diehard Mets fan, but that's like military band is like high double A, triple A ball, sometimes professional as far a musician, like being in a top symphony. It's like maybe the next level down, except for like if you're in a DC band, well, they're really that's the top players. But you have to know what you're doing, and we do
Mm-hmm.
a lot of varied things. From marching parades to doing all kind of concerts and stuff like that. I just do a lot of reception work. Just take out go to the admiral's house and put a guitar player, piano player, and just from playing, be a potted plant in the background, which is one of my favorite things to do. So, but I had good training. I played like say with Joe Viola was one of the top saxophone teachers in the world, and I loved studying with Joe and Bill Wilson. He was great. He was an education. Just watching him count off a song was an education because he had everybody breathing at the same time. He just filled the room with this just amazing energy. They're both were really great teachers, and you know when I got
Wow.
out of the, I had to get out of the Navy because of the Stony, but it wasn't known what it was at that time, and I was
Yeah, I
having
was gonna.
difficulty moving my arms.
I was going to ask when you first started noticing symptoms, and if it was kind of before it's been, because I know it's only been within the last like maybe 10 years that we've kind of been speaking out more about it. People have been learning a little more about it. Neurologists have been doing more research on it. And I'm going to ask you like if that was something that was kind of hard to go through.
Yeah, well, it was. It was a very difficult time because you've got that picture up before. That was from when I was at a Navy band in Newport, Rhode Island, in the late '80s, early '90s, and we were on a job one time up in the Naval Air Station in Brunswick, Maine, and somebody was coming into. We always traveled in these vans, and and the sliding door and a passenger door, and somebody slammed my hand in the van door, and I broke 2 fingers on my left hand. So I was out of work, so I couldn't play for a while. But a couple weeks after that, I started to notice I had trouble with my right hand. My fingers started to shake, and my right hand became slow. I really didn't think anything of it, but then, just things started to happen, and they say some of the things that triggered dystonia could be a minor injury, right, or a change of instruments, or excessive practice. So I was most of the time I played a lot of piccolo in the marching band. I played flute and piccolo in the concert band, but I played sax. I was the tenor sax who does the solo. It's the lead tenor player in the big band who jumps in and takes a solo. So somebody had to take my spot. I was out of work for 6 to 8 weeks with 2 broken fingers. I couldn't play. Somebody had to take that slot from me. So in the meantime, so the band has to go on. So that was the minor injury. That was step 1. The next thing is, so somebody had that thing, and then in that 2-month period of time, somebody transferred out of the band, and they had been playing bari sax. So I wound up switched over to bari sax. So I had a change of instrument. I was having difficulty with the bari, so it was because of the finger. So it moved me over to alto.
Oh my gosh!
So I'm trying to get all these things different. So I had excessive practice and change of instruments and a minor injury. So
all within a short period of time, right?
Right, and then little by little, things just started to go wrong with my playing, and then I just happened to be at a time when I was getting ready to transfer, and I had to go to at that time it was called the unit leaders course at the Navy School of Music in Virginia Beach. And we had to conduct a lot. We had a drum major, and I was having difficulty with my arm conducting and drum majoring. I couldn't keep time. I go, to conduct the anthem. I 1, 2, 4, 3. My arm was like collapsed. I had a lot of issues. So and my playing was going down. So at the same time, so I had a kind of a rough period there. And so that was the first step to it. And then I wound up in the being stationed in Navy band in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which you figure would be a very nice thing. It was, and my playing just started to go down, and I wasn't able to conduct. And then in the meantime, I just got promoted. We had these tests that we had to take, and they were the craziest. These music tests is like, so you take the 4th note of the French horn part and this combined. You had to know all these aspects of, it was like those kind of questions. If a train is traveling 60, at 47 miles an hour, how long would it take to get to Seattle? Well, how long does it take if you take the 4th note of the national anthem, transpose it to the 3rd note of the French horn part, and combine it with the range of the piccolo? What chord do you get? So you had to know this. They were very crazy questions. So I just got promoted. And I went up in the new band, and here I was supposed to be a unit leader, supposed to be conducting ceremonial bands, and I couldn't conduct. So I had to get a no conducting thing from the doctors, because I couldn't conduct. And in the meantime, my playing, I'd start noticing these tremors and things like that, and I couldn't practice. Just things were going. And then I started to not be able to double tongue on a piccolo, and we play a lot of marches, and that's a lot of ticket. There's a lot of double tonguing, a lot of triple tonguing on that. I was having a hard time doing that. So meantime, it was almost kind of, sort of useless in a sense, because I couldn't conduct and I couldn't really play. So what I was, most of my playing at that time would be just in Admirals, just going to play receptions. And which nice is I put a horn down, pick up if the tenor was bothering me, I pick up the flute. If the flute was bothering me, I pick up, so I could just put the horn down, and it wasn't that important to just say, somebody else, piano player take a solo, something. I can just put the horn down and rest and pick something up again, and go right back to it. And I really didn't notice that many things with it at the time, but my practice times were limited. I was having difficulty, like as a saxophone player, anybody who plays a reed instrument, you want to work on your reeds. It's important to work on your reeds. So I had a plan where I soaked my reeds, and then I rub, flip around, rub them, and back and forth, and then and I started. Now I was getting tired doing the. My arm was getting very tired just doing finishing the reed. So I started to play on reeds out of the box, and that was okay. I got used to that, and just little by little, you have to just keep you're playing just little by little, by little, your quality of your work goes down, and you really don't notice it that much, but it diminishes dramatically. And they always said an adult adage: if you don't practice, if you skip a day, you know it. If you skip 2 days, your audience knows it. And I was losing I was losing my edge, but I was still a decent enough player, that when I got out of the Navy and I went to Berkeley, I was able to audition and play with Phil Wilson and study with Joe Viola. So I had decent marks there, but and at the time I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what this was Dystonia. But funny thing, one of the things that happened with Dystonia is your hands would just go different places, and things that were reflex cease to be a reflex, and it's always it's like the alcoholic who gets drunk at the worst time. The Dystonia kind of kicked into me at the worst moments, and I remember playing with.
It's so sluggish, isn't it? It's just a sluggish feeling.
I was playing with the big band with the Rainbow Band with Phil, and I was taking a solo. It was one of the times it was like, everything, I could hear it coming, and I knew it was coming up next, and the solo was just clicking, was going crazy, but it was in A flat, and I kept playing D natural, and I could not stop myself from playing D natural. I don't know what it was, but I could just not stop myself. And he's screaming D flat, D flat, and I could not play a D flat to save my life. And the D flat in the woodwinds is mostly open. No, there's no fingering. It's an open note. There's no. Your fingers not covering any keys on D flat. Most woodwind instruments. So maybe that was it. But I just could not get a D flat.
Can you try to explain because I've read about so much about hand dystonia because there's more research on hand dystonia, and I've watched videos over it. But can you kind of explain? Because I haven't really seen sax players with hand dystonia, even though I know there are many. But can you try to explain to anyone that's watching that might not know about hand dystonia, which hand it affects and how it affects you?
Well, I have it in both hands. And you had a post on your site from Dr. Frucht in New York City. I saw him about 15 years ago, and he's had multifocal, multi-segmental bibrachial dystonia. So that's both arms, both focal on both hands, and that it spreads. So it's sort of in my face, it's in my hands. This is like the natural position of my hands.
Yeah, and that's kind of rare for it to spread to.
It's kind of just curls in. And I noticed the curls when I was started to go shake somebody's hand, and my fingers were just kind of bent in. So I wake up like that, I go to sleep like that, I wake up like that.
Oh my gosh!
It just kind of pulls itself in all the time. But your fingers they just go to some different place. Mm-hmm. And I had other experience when I was playing, and my pinky kept closing in on and just making a G sharp on it. And I'm playing with this group that I had played with. It was a great group, but I would sit in with them every now and then. And they playing. He said, "The guy standing to me, he said, you play an A much?" Because I kept playing a G sharp. I couldn't stop myself from playing G sharp, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I had no idea what it was. I just, I got out. My discharge from the Navy was for they called it painful arc syndrome with minor nerve paralysis in my hand. So they said painful arc, so I couldn't really raise my arm clearly, and then minor nerve damage in my hands. I didn't know what it was, but I was living in Hawaii at the time when I got out. I got out, went to Berkeley, got out, went to LA for film scoring, and I had some work in LA, but not much. But anyway, I wound up selling cars in LA, and I go to shake somebody's hand, and my fingers would be stuck underneath that. My first couple of years away from music and doing the car thing, I was okay because I was kind of excited by a new thing, but the music was a part of my life, and I wanted to do it. So I was having issues with that, and I wound up getting out of the business because I didn't really like it. But I was living in Hawaii, and I went to a doctor about my hands, and the doctor said, "Oh, I think you have dystonia, but we'll talk about that at your next appointment." Because I had maybe 3 or 4 of the EMGs where they zap you with in your hands and shake. They put the needles in your hands and arms and zap you with that. And with dystonia, it registers as almost normal with dystonia. So. Because it's really not the nerves, it's the way the nerves are processed. The signals are
Mhm.
processed more so than the nerves itself. So doctor said, I think you have dystonia. So I went home and I looked online and I saw musicians with dystonia, and it was like, oh my God, I wrote everything that was on that was like a checklist. I had every one of those things with that. And it finally validated for me what it was. But
Oh my gosh.
one of the things that I found the worst part about it is not just not being able to play much, but for me, you know, and most musicians, it's what makes us happy. And you take that part away from, so I kept sinking into depression more and more and more, and that was the worst part of it. And the sad thing is, in the medical field, if you have any type of mental health issue, they don't think there's anything wrong with you. If you say something to something else, they think it's that. And even to this day, I even had a doctor a couple of months ago say something. I think this is all in his head. You know. In the meantime, I I participated in a study in Mass General for dystonia, musicians with dystonia, and what they told me we got to get an MRI and a brain scan and things happen, and they make you do tests while you're hooked up to electrodes. She put a, you know, make your hand move with that. And what she said is what she notices a lot of players with focal dystonia is the nerve signals don't stop. So it's like driving with a car without brakes. You put your foot on a brake, you know, the bad brakes are bad. You'll eventually stop, but you're not going to stop steadily, and you're not really going to be able to control how to work it. You might gain control it for a while, but you're eventually not going to stop. You're not going to stop the way you do it, and that's how it is
Yeah.
with playing. It's not, you know, I was trying to play a little bit, and you know, here and there, you know, I didn't touch my instruments for quite a long time, and I was doing a lot. I do some composing, but you know, that's why I went to school for film scoring, is I would try to do composing. And when that were
Huh.
it was okay, you know, I was a decent composer, but I went to LA at 40. If I went to LA at 20, I might still be there. But I had 40-year-old bills. I had a 40-year-old life. I had you know, responsibilities. I couldn't, you know, wait around for a next gig. You know, I had to work. So, you know, so that's what I did. So I wound up, so like I said, I wound up selling cars, and you know, even when I did that, I related everything to music, which is what I do for everything.
Yes.
But the dystonia, it takes a long time to recognize, and I'm doing with the VA doctors, and the most part of my experience with the VA doctors has been fine. But what would happen? Like I remember some doctors said, "Well, can't you learn to play something else? Why don't you learn to play a trumpet with your left hand?" What do you mean by that? You know, you don't understand. I said, "Why don't you put a scalpel in your teeth and do surgery?" You know, something stupid like that. This is what the kind of things we're dealing with, especially in the
That's a great
military.
analogy. I'm going to
You
use that.
know,
Perfect.
yeah, it's like in the you know, in the military bands, you have to know what you're doing before you get in. You have to audition. It's not like anything. It's not like outside of being a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse. It's the only job that you had to know how to do before that, and it requires a lot of time. You just can't just show up and read your. You know, you have to practice, especially if you're
Yeah.
responsible for playing several different instruments at a time. You know, you have to practice. You got to make time for this stuff. It's a constant work, and it's a very finite thing. And what I found that it does affect musicians who are more kinesthetic in nature, and that's how I was. I mean, I know music theory. I'm very good at it. I understand it. I know what's supposed to go where and there. But I was never that type of improviser. So okay, I'm going to play a minor seventh over this chord. I'm going to play a mixolydian with a flat line. I was never that kind of player. I would just whatever react to what was ever on there at the moment. And I found that does affect more kinesthetic players who are more kinesthetic in nature than people who use their ears more. So the last year or so, I decided let me try a different approach. Because when I was playing a lot, if I would pick up the alto sax, I prefer tenor, but I would pick up the alto if I wanted to hear something different. So I had the opportunity to get a new alto about 2 years ago
Oh, yay.
and I was able to do that. But what happened with that is my fingers started to get stuck under the keys.
Oh,
My left hand would shift, and I'd want to closing the keys and in it. So,
oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
yeah, you get to this point that you want to play like you want to play, but you realize you can't do that, and that's kind of been the hardest part for me. And I could live with a person who never heard me play, never heard me play in my heyday when I was playing, and I'll try to play something. She said, "Oh, that sounded great," and I'm like, you know, I get down and say, "No, To me, it didn't, because I know what I could do and what I should be have been, and what had been able to do in the past, and what I wanted to do and didn't come out, what my body didn't allow me to do. And it seems like you get to a point where you play, and the more times when your emotion and everything starts to get into it, that's when everything kind of gets worse. You play
Yeah.
something, and the more time you put into it, the worse it gets. And that's the frustrating part about it. And you want to play like you want to play. You want to play like like you know how to do it, but you can't do it.
Yeah, I always tell people that it's a lot like having a stroke and then having to relearn how to walk, because you go your whole life, walking, you never think about it. It's just something you've naturally done since birth, and then you wake up one day and you have to relearn how to walk, and even though you know in your mind how to do it, you know exactly how it feels, you know exactly
Right.
what it should feel like, but the brain is just not sending the right signals out. It's broken, and you can recover to a certain degree through physiological retraining, but it varies. Some people are able to recover a lot of their abilities and get back to playing again, but it's always going to be slightly, it's going to be different than the old way of doing things. It's never going to be this
Right.
natural uh, way of playing. And I think that's the biggest thing, is even for the musicians who are able to return to playing. Um, like for me, like I can play again in groups, but the thing that holds me back from doing auditions or going that further step of getting to that advanced level is well, one, for example, endurance, but also
Mm.
the fact that you're required to have that 100% full control of your abilities, of all the subtleties and nuances in your playing, to be able to play professionally. And
Right.
that's the thing. You could be like, say you could be like, I feel like I'm 99% recovered, but that 1%, you
Absolutely.
have to have it, or it's just, you just don't feel confident enough to rely on your abilities. And not to mention that, but the fact that you go through relapses every now and then too, like
Right. Yeah.
and
Because I
yeah.
exactly because I found that I could, I was enjoying things, and like I said, I got used to my practice habits were take something and play it in every key until I got it, and move on to the next key until I got it, until I get it, and move on, and then add that, and then take that vocabulary, put it to use. And I was having good success for maybe like a month or so, and then all of a sudden it started to go, and I kind of got it back, and another swept another level, and kind of went, kind of just prepped out again on me. So it's just it's hard. But if you think about so many things that go what a musician has to do and what we're doing at any point in time, whether we're playing in a group or whatever, or we're reading music, we're here that we have to hear what's coming. There's so many signals to go through. One theory that I had saw, you probably heard of it, for Dystonia, is like there's so many things that you have to do. There's so many signals that go through that the body cannot process all those signals all at once. And the more
Yeah.
aware and the more astute you are, and the more aware of what's going on, there's more angles to it. If you just think of a note, play it, your body on, it's one thing. But if you're thinking about, I have to play this, and I have to blend in here, and I got to listen to this, and I got to create this emotion, I have to tail out here, and my release has to be at this phrase, and I have to get a next breath for the next thing, and I got to watch the conductor because he's gonna, there's a million things that are going on, and it's
Yeah.
overload. It's overload.
Yeah, you
You know.
can't tune into that. I always tell people, like, it's not something you can play through, because um when you have dystonia, it's like you're so focused on the feeling, or that lack of sensory in your hand or in your face. It's just not there, so it's like you have nowhere else to focus besides that feeling. And it's just very difficult to pick up any type of grasp or sensory. And so to try to keep playing through it, it just makes it worse. It just degrades it even further.
Right. It's it gets you in everything, and the longer you have it, it spreads to different areas for different things. And
Yeah.
this is the thing that's got me. I mean, I've had issues with my legs. I've had issues, where my legs just almost seize up, whatever, and
Oh my gosh.
but it happens to do with the excitement, or even and like the first time it happened was like somebody was locked in the basement, and they're calling me, "Yeah, I'm locked, I'm locked." and help, and I'm trying to get to him, and I had to go down 3 flights of stairs to get it, and my legs buckled. I couldn't go down the stairs because
Oh my gosh.
it just like pulled me down. And then we were at a filming us. I was getting invited, got tickets to the Dr. Oz show, and then I won the trivia contest. And I went to stand up, and I couldn't stand up. My legs just went, buckled down. So even though, like, if I go to a baseball game and I can't stand up with the cheer and excitement, my legs, it pulls me down. So I feel it. I have to be careful with excitement and stuff like that. So, yeah,
Yeah, and
it's so,
it's like Dr. Afari said, like musicians tend to have musicians in general have over elastic brains. And that's why they love to study musicians' brains so much, because we kind of
yeah,
have this high level of neuroplasticity going on in our brain because we're doing so much multitasking. But with musicians with dystonia, it tends to be even higher. We tend
right,
to have, and these excited signals that go out. And for some, it's really, severe. It just goes to other areas of our body as well.
right.
I haven't had as much spreading as you. I definitely, at the height of my symptoms, I have embouchure dystonia, so it started to affect my tongue. It started to
Right.
affect my jaw and my neck and even my lower or upper back. And I couldn't drink out of a bottle of water. I couldn't whistle. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do any motion with my lips without these tremors and spasms happening or this tension. And I always tell people it's very confusing when you first get it, when it starts to set in, because you're just like, you feel
Yeah.
like your body is so foreign. Something that
Right.
was so natural, normal, just is so foreign.
Yeah. You don't know you don't know what's happening. It's like, why all of a sudden can't I play a default? Why can't I play these things that I did on my own? They just disappear. Or like you say, my tongue's just even just a little bit. It gets a little stuck. It's the top of
Yeah,
behind your teeth, and it's like, you go to talk, and you're like, it doesn't come out. And you're and
yeah,
like, and then more things, like one of the things I had been doing the last couple of years was I'm a Reiki master, but I wanted to combine my compositional skills with my healing skills, so I could do a lot of healing music, and I'd go to different events, and I'd do a lecture and whatever. And the beginning of the lecture, I'd like, it just the more I had something in my mind to say, it wouldn't come out at first. So I had to like back away and just say, okay, step back
yeah.
and kind of approach it from a little different, and then I can kind of get going. But it's a little difficult at first sometimes.
Yeah, the adrenaline really affects it a lot too. I remember when I started playing an orchestra again, my very first rehearsal in an orchestra again, I had so much adrenaline going, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just going to make my symptoms horrible, because it's
Right.
like takes it to another level. You can imagine already being nervous on stage with normal abilities, and
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of calm it down to extent and play through. But with dystonia, it's just like you have no hope. So it's like
Right.
my first rehearsal, I just crashed and burned, and I was like, oh my gosh, I might as well just start back at ground zero. It was just awful.
Well,
But
that would must have been a great experience getting back and playing, in orchestra. That would have been I'd love that.
yeah, I do. It's a 50-50. It's kind of a two-sided, two edges of the sword kind of thing. Because
Yeah.
it's very. I'm really grateful to be able to play in groups again and do gigs, locally and in the area. But I still also have to deal with a lot of those people that don't understand what is happening when I am struggling. It's
Right.
like, I need you to fix you. I need you to fix that articulation. And it's like I can't just fix it. It's not going to be 100% accurate every single time. I have to
Right.
really work my way into it. It
Right.
takes double the amount of effort than it normally would to fix something for me. Um,
Right. It's
but
not just it's not just even the playing. Like, one of my favorite things as a musician that I missed the most was playing in a pit band. And you'd have, like, two saxophones, a clarinet, flute, piccolo, whatever, and you had to pick up the thing. You had 4 bars, but if it's going to take me 6 bars to hook the neck strap on because my fingers don't work, how am I going to play the part? Just a little. If I can't even click the neck strap on, for get the hook to work because I'm fumbling through it. It's What do you do? It's just
yeah, I was going to ask you, I know that your dystonia symptoms have to be so severe because they spread to so many areas. Is there anything that you found that has has helped you, any adaptations or modifications as far as like the neck strap or like how you hold your instrument?
I
Is there
try.
anything that you found?
Yeah, I try to. If I'm playing alto or whatever, I'll rest. Maybe I'll just rest. Put the horn on my. It'll just fit where I rest the horn on the side. This is not that bad. If I play my little aerophone, it's not that bad
Oh,
because
cool.
I can rest that on my knee. And the only thing I get out of that is a little wet spot on my thigh from the from the spit coming out. But with saxophone, it's like, especially like what I started to do was I avoided the palm keys on the side. There's the three things on the side, because if you're playing saxophone, there's pressure this one way, pressure this way, so you're holding the horn steady, but you had to have a little bit of pressure from either side. And so if I go to the palm keys, then I would let this go, and the horn would kind of slip to the side like that. So I stopped playing those 3, 4 notes on the side, on the side. But I sort of like when somebody starts to lose their memory and they would have all these things about saying, well, I didn't need to know that. Oh, I didn't need to play those notes, so I didn't play them. I made all the excuses as to why I didn't play those notes. So if I was just doing a reception, all I had to do was like play Satin Doll 6 times or something else. If I didn't have to play those notes, I didn't play those notes. So I kind of avoided those parts of the horn for a while. So I had to do that. Avoided that. I tried the neck strap. I tried the harness. Harness worked for a little bit of time, but now if I just the easiest thing for me is to rest the an alto on my leg. That helps a lot.
And then
And,
do you have any did you have any sensory tricks, like, or any sensory type of tricks show up like at any point, like I know, and this is more for embouchures, because sometimes we can touch our face or just lightly touch our face in the area where the tremor is, and it will calm down for a second.
Yeah. What I notice, if I pick up the flute, it's like this half of my face is relaxed, but this half is up. So
Oh
I
my
have to
gosh.
wait for it to stay there and play a long tone as long as I can before it starts to sputter a little bit. Then I can kind of get this to relax. But after I play, then I get a tremor in here, right in this muscles. I'll get a tremor here, which could be just from muscles that are worked for years, and then all of a sudden they weren't worked, and then they're triggered again. So I'll get that spot tremor. But I haven't found anything that worked for me as far as like to prevent my fingers from curling from my embouchure from going. But again, I was so upset with what was going on. I stopped playing for 20 years. But it was a lot of it was the depression. That kind of.
Yeah, it is a lot
It's
to lose. I mean,
yeah.
you feel like you can't talk to your friends that are musicians anymore, just in the sense, like, they don't really understand what you're going through.
Right.
And it takes a long time, even in the beginning, a long time to just, hear your same instrument again and
Oh,
not be like, oh my gosh, I just arrow to the
oh,
heart,
I know. It was to be a long time to be able to listen to something and not feel it or not cry, or not cry or whatever. But like when I was in the car business, I'd be 1 month I'd lead the board, the next month I would. That'd be like a yo. But I would be like, I would tell people I'm not a salesman, but I'm an out of work musician. And every time I said that, it was like a knife going through you, and it adds up until you finally can. This is this. If you're a musician, you have it in you. It just builds, and it has to find some way to get out. That's why composition worked for me, and so I was able to do some composition, and that really helps.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's so important to find that outlet. And
yeah.
when I was talking to the tuba player the other day on the live stream, Adam, he made a really good point, saying that he had to kind of learn how to look at himself, kind of like music is just a piece of the pie, and there are all these
Right.
other pieces to me, and I kind of had to learn how to pay attention to that. Like, how can I be a whole person in other ways and accept it? And it's very difficult because it's like we want to still have that creative outlet, but it's hard because we put in so many years into playing and developing our skills and making those connections, and then even just to go into another area of music, it's still a struggle, because it's like, oh great, like, even though you might be good at that secondary area, it's still like you're also still dealing with this loss at the same time. And
Right.
You just want to be able to when you're going through the stress, you just want to be able to play your instrument because that's what relieves your stress. And then it's like you can't. It's
because
just
that's going to create even more on top of it. As far as the composition, it was like, so I went to Berkeley. I got out of the Navy. I think it was like 36, 37 when I got out. I went to Berkeley, and so I film scoring major. They didn't require much of a portfolio, but you had to maintain things. But I was going to school with people who all they did was write music, and so I was able to hold my own with that, and that. So it's all like learning a whole new craft. But here I am, and thrust into a position where it's a fairly, high position. That's a very good school for film scoring. No, not that many schools for film scoring out there. That's one of the top ones. And you had to rehearse, you had to have your parts ready, you had to conduct, you had to do things. So I started to conduct with my left hand, and I was kind of a little bit of that. But then that started to go out too. And again, as far as you have to be specific in what you're doing. You're either conducting to a stopwatch or you're conducting to a flash of light on a screen, because of what you have to have a thing that comes out. You have to, your music has to be right at that direct second. And if you're a little slow, how can you know that you're going to hit that sync point to get it going? So that was a sort of an issue, But the more that I did it, the more of an issue it became.
oh my gosh.
Once you try to, because like I say, we try to get everything down finite to hone the thing, and we have this big thing. If we don't care, if we just think this is like, if we think cheese is what comes out of a spray can, then that's fine. You can deal with it, but we don't. It's not just what comes out of a spray. We deal with all those other. We're the guys who are in, who are aging cheese in a wine cellar, in a cave. That's where our palates are. Not out of the spray can. So if there's a conductor or a player, that's our palette. Is like that finite developed thing. If we only, so we want to get it that way, and the more we try to get it that way, the more the Dystonia kicks in, and we don't get it. If we could just
Yeah.
satisfy ourselves with a spray can of cheese, we'd probably still be playing right now. Maybe. but we have a refined palate, so to speak. So it's a different story. We want more. And the more that I wanted to come out of the conducting and the composing, that's the things they wouldn't click anymore. So
Yeah, I always try to tell people that dystonia is a lot. It hits us where we need our abilities the most, like in those fine details in our playing. Whether it's like your hand and being able to adjust your finger just a slight little tilt, to cover that hole or something. Or the fast passages, just being able to have that fluidity in your playing. It's just difficult for people to understand because it's more than just tension that happens, and it's not tension that we're creating. It's the brain signal sending one signal to one muscle and another to another muscle that are fighting. They're co-contracting, and you can imagine when this happens as involuntary, it's out of your control. It just it causes such a mess, and so we get this tension, but it's not something that we created. Like for example, like I think musicians who don't have dystonia, they sometimes forget that even when we're not injured or don't have dystonia, we are highly aware of our bodies in the first place in general when we're practicing. We'll be practicing, and usually we will feel something's a little off. We'll go and we'll adjust, a little bit just to fix it. And we just naturally do that, without thinking. But with dystonia, it's like we'll feel something off. We'll go to adjust it, and it just gets worse. So it's not like we're practicing this bad habit. It's like we think that we have what we see or notice is a bad habit, so we try to fix it, and it just makes it worse. There's no, where if it was just a bad habit or something that we were practicing wrongly, we could easily fix it over time by adjusting our technique. But with dystonia, that's not the case.
Right, and there's so many things like just even like doing a decrescendo or something on a saxophone. It's like, so first off, you're trying to get quiet, but you have to relax your embouchure. But at the same time, you have to relax your embouchure. You have to adjust the airspeed to keep the note from going flat. And then you got to think this way while you're trying to get the sound to go this way. There's, if normally if it's involuntary, it happens. But as dystonia, it's like what your brain's like, which one am I going to work at? I'm going to work one at a time. Which one am I going to go to? Am I going to go to the relax? Am I going to take care of the intonation? Am I take care of the breath? So there's these things that you don't know. So you lose something somewhere, and does not process the whole thing anymore. It questions which one of these things am I going to go after now. So I
Yeah,
think maybe to get overcome it, we have to maybe just pick a one and don't worry about the other ones. So, hmm,
yeah, it's so frustrating. Even and I know that hand dystonia rehabilitation, their methods are a lot different than embouchure. Embouchure, we don't really have any that are spoken about, which it's my goal to try to change that, to speak out more about it. But
right,
even in rehabilitation, it's like we have to go as far back as just completely deprogramming
right,
our brain signals associated with playing. So it's
right,
like as soon as the signal gets sent, it's already broken. Even just thinking about playing the horn, it's already broken. So it's like I have to try to deprogram this as if I never touched a horn in my life,
right.
and try to rebuild from there. And not only that, but go as far back as breaking the horn down to just the mouthpiece, or just even further than that, just blowing on an item without these contractions happening, trying to blow on just an inanimate
Mm-hmm.
object like a spoon or something without these contractions happening. And it's very difficult. It's a lot of people that don't have dystonia, they think it's like going back to beginner stage, but it's worse. It's like going back to crippled,
Right,
disabled times 100 stage.
right. It's just not the same. It's like it's just one of those things that, and like as far as a dystonia advocate now, say I was in the military, so that was my job for a long time. But if I had went and said, well, my hand from pulling a trigger, my finger's sore. Oh, here you go, rubber stamp. Here's your here's your disability.
Yes.
How do you get hurt playing a piccolo? How do you get hurt playing a saxophone? It happens, and it takes the long. I mean, over a decade before recognized.
Yeah.
Long time. And even as far as like doctors, as far as like will even look at you like that. Like there was a. I remember hearing some like young doctors will say if you hear footsteps, think horses, not don't think horses, not zebras. As far as a doctor with dystonia, you got to think zebras this time because the horses aren't. It's not horses though. What's the next step? you know, if you're having issues with your hands, you have an EMG that comes out that there's no issues, then something else is there, and that should be the next step. But some of
Yeah.
us, like say, have little, some mental health issues with some, depression, which the music always kind of cured. It was a natural, a natural thing to endorphin to calm that. They're not going to listen to you. That was the thing in my case, especially if you're stuttering. It's not trying to get your words out. You're not going to be heard. And
Hmm.
that was a big part for me finally getting that part out, or I was able to just finally understand, listen to me what I'm telling you. This is not just some hobby. God, this is something that I devoted my life to. You know.
Yes, exactly. It's like, as injured musicians and disabled musicians, we have a lot of kind of, I really hope that the stigma breaks at some point. A lot of kind of backlash, and not only that, but just kind of being told that, we should just switch instruments, or like treated like it as a hobby, when we're like, all we want is the same respect that we had when we were able to play. And
Yeah.
for people to be like, I don't doubt that you're a great player, otherwise you wouldn't have even been in this position. Because I mean, you can't get vocal dystonia, and well, majority of the research shows that most of the players that do get dystonia are professional level,
Right.
and that has to say something about us as musicians. I mean, I never reached professional level, but they have the research that shows, we tend to be advanced players, professional
Right.
players, or even as amateurs, in this kind of leadership positions where we learn things really fast, we excel really fast,
Right.
and we tend to learn quickly and naturally. So it's hard when people treat it like it was just a hobby, and they're like, well, it was just something fun you did. Um, it's like, no, this is a huge part of me. It's like watching someone you love pass away. You just
Yeah.
never forget about them.
Yeah. It's just it's really hard to put into words, but to talk to somebody who's been through it is really important because nobody I know I really admit have met anybody who has been through it. But I went through that study, and I think I saw it on the website, the Facebook site about the study. So I went to Boston, last September for this test with the Mass General and Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School sponsoring the tests where I had to go through the MRI and everything and I had just been to the VA doctor in maybe July. Had to go to a movement clinic. They sent me to the movement clinic every now and then, movement disorder clinic, and that's when that's all in his head, And when and I'm going through that test, and the lady says exactly what she told me beforehand that you show the symptoms, you show the exact signs that we see in other people where the signals don't stop. And I said, so you mean that? And I always knew I had it. But to see the brain scan, to see the thing, and I just started crying because it was like somebody finally just validated. I wasn't getting that, and I was just like, you just burst. And the next thing I know, they're all just hugging me and stuff like that. But I just couldn't stop crying at that point because, it's you have it. It's a good thing. I know that I have it, but I had it. But now but you have people who still don't validate, still don't believe you that you have it. There must be something wrong. There's something wrong with you. You don't have anything going on. But here was black and white results. Boom. That was really good. But and also good for me. But also the testing. One thing that I did for my metaphysical Reiki training is when I got into that MRI tube, I just kept breathing in slowly and just like having a mantra. I'm okay with my surroundings. I'm okay with my surroundings. But like I was saying, I was in the MRI tube and I'm just being able to be as still as possible. So they got very good results. So they're able to take the results from my thing and use and assist others. So I was very grateful about that. I might not have a chance to be playing again, but if I can take what I have and help somebody else to go through it, that would be a very good thing for me. And that's why when you offered this, when you put this up, I thought I had to do it. I just had to go about doing it. So
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really astounding, like how many musicians with dystonia that want to do this live stream, and I'm really happy about it because our voices really need to be heard. And it's taken. I mean, it's hard to speak out about it, because of our reputation. And in the past, it was like very kind of taboo and looked down upon. But now that we're all just coming out and saying like, hey, we have a voice too, and we can't just keep ignoring injuries because obviously the number of cases are rising. There's more professionals being recognized for having this disorder, in the spotlight. And so it's like, great, I can talk about it now. And I hope that someone eventually, years down the road will listen and realize that this is a real disorder. It's not just some, issue of bad habits, tension, some type of technical work that needs to be done. And I always tell people that it really is like this disorder is very disabling in the sense that it's a night and day feeling. It's like one day you can play, the next it's just gone. It's not there.
And the other thing that I went through for a while, it was like it would be something that only bothered me if I went to do something. So if I didn't do anything, because anytime I started to do something, it would, so it fed into the not moving off the chair or anything like that. It kind of fed into the depression part of it. But so it bothers me if I do something. Well, guess what? Your body says, well, don't do that. So you don't do that. But it does affect everything. I mean, by handwriting, I can't, my handwriting's horrible because of that. Sometimes I have trouble, stirring up. Sometimes the signal was so crazy. Like if I'm going to a drawer for a spoon or do something for stirring, my hand is moving before I open the drawer. The signals are screwed up. If I'm reaching for a spoon to go stir something, my arm is moving that. Or if I'm watching the baseball game or something and I see a pitcher and I'm thinking, what's that like? My arm just does the move. It's just the throwing movement, or just all of a sudden my arm will jerk and do something, or my leg will just buckle or something like that. It's just the signals are so off, but they get off at different gaps. Maybe with the horn they might be off this much, but that much on an instrument when you're putting air through the thing and every little thing, it's then you really see it that way. But but the gaps are bigger in different things. So it's a
yeah, it is kind of like the
thing.
like the video buffering, and you're like waiting for the video to load, and it's just buffering. It really does feel like that. It's like you're like, wow, I didn't expect that to come out so fast, or I didn't expect it to. You tell it to go right, it goes left. You tell it to go up, it goes down. It's frustrating.
Sometimes I'll leave a message on somebody's, phone or whatever, and I said, "You talk to couldn't understand. I didn't understand a word you said. You talk so fast." Well, can't control it. Sometimes it just bursts out. If I could try it again, there's times when you can kind of control your speech, but other times I can't control the rate of my speech because of that. It just pops out, and you don't know what's going to exactly come out. So it's a strange,
Yes. Yeah.
you know. But also the other part you mentioned, like I know some people say, well, one thing is I have that brain surgery, but if you have like I need surgery on my shoulders, but I know like dystonia shortens tendons over time, so that's why I need a surgery on my shoulders. But anytime you have any injuries again to your body, it triggers more dystonia. So no surgery because of that. So my concern was, well,
Mm-hmm.
if I get the brain surgery, then I'm going to trigger other things. It's going to trigger the dystonia that way. Maybe there's somehow they can do something from the outside. Maybe somehow to work with it, trigger, the symptom, the signals that way. Because its signals are okay. It's the way it's processed that's screwy. But I would be afraid for me personally to have anything done with that because I
Yeah.
know any little injury, anything like that, it affects. I had surgery on my foot and and my toe started to do some weird things. It doesn't do it anymore, but there was a time for about 3 months after the surgery that my foot would do odd things because of that. So it gets you in every little thing that you don't
Yeah.
expect it to get you. I have some difficulty. I don't know. You might have
Yeah,
it
I can
with.
understand it. Like,
Do you have issue with swallowing?
yeah, I can understand if you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you. Sorry, my audio is kind of delayed, but
Right.
yeah, if you feel very if it tends to spread to other limbs, I can totally understand your concern with that because it's like, oh my gosh, I tend to be highly prone to developing dystonia in other areas of my body.
Right.
If I get brain surgery, what are the chances that it's not going to show up somewhere else?
Right.
For me, I don't have so much that issue because I just have very embouchure specific dystonia.
Mm-hmm.
But it has spread to like my tongue, like when I at the height of my symptoms, because I tell people like I have a little bit a different experience, which I haven't found in many others, where I feel like my dystonia kind of gradually built up and reached a height. Um, I took time off, and then when I came back, my dystonia symptoms were really bad. I couldn't get a sound out of my horn,
Mm.
and then they kind of receded just a little bit. And But at the height of my symptoms, it was affecting my tongue, and I mean, it didn't recede like a lot. It was just a tiny bit, but at the height, my tongue was really affected. So when I speak, sometimes I would kind of trip over my tongue. It just felt
Right.
sluggish. Like I would say something, and all of a sudden, I would see a movement in this side of my face kind of go up or differently. And because when you speak, sometimes you speak with the eyebrows, and I would notice like movements
Mm-hmm.
that it would just affect the whole side of my face and
Right.
my tongue at the same time when I spoke. Um, and uh, it's very interesting because, like, for me, it is like Dr. Farrar says, like, it affects kind of one side of the body. It's either left side or right, or I mean, how do I say this? It affects one side of the body where there's the stonic side, and then there's like the side that's like not reacting. And so for me, my right side is the one that does all the compensating moves. My left side is the one that has the actual dystonic like overload.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then he also says it can tend to be upper body or lower body affected kind of in that way as well.
Right.
Did you feel that way at all either? I know that's in many of your limbs, but do you feel like it's kind of been have that kind of lack of symmetry in areas of your body?
Yeah, they're not. My body always like my brain and my body aren't the best of friends. Put it that way. One says, to do one thing, they don't work, and it doesn't really work in sync. So I have to be careful about that. But I, from what I had heard at the beginning, that it affected flute players differently because they were taking one part of their body and going around and bringing their left hand around to their right side. So that kind of screwed things around for some people because you're taking your hands and you're going over to here to finger. But it's I tend
Mm-hmm.
to do with less some right hand that I do more finite things with my right hand, less finite things with my left. But as I stopped using my right and compensated with my left hand more to do things, especially because I have shoulder problems so I would use my left arm more. Then I started to notice things more in the left hand left side as well. And as far as like instruments, they affect different how to do different things. Like if I'm playing saxophone, I have necessarily fingering on my right hand, but I'm supporting the weight of the instrument on the right hand as well. So that kind of affected that that part of me. When I pick up a flute now, it's like
Yeah.
again, there's a little bit of pressure. The flute you hold here, but you also have to hold here too. So this part of this finger will tire very easily, and I'm trying to hold it, and it'll start to, as it gets tired, it pulls down, and then I'm closing a key that I'm not supposed to be closing at that moment. Because if it's a woodwind player, maybe probably not as much as a French horn player, but I'm sure you have to because you want to stay as close contact as the keys as possible for no gaps in technique. So you want your key to go up, but you don't want your finger to. You want your finger and the key to go up at the exact same thing. You don't want this extra your fingers flying off the keys. So try to stay as close as you can, but you can't really do that with the Stony. Either you're going to close the key or you're going to flip it farther open. You know, that's the part with me with saxophone now. I'll flip it open, and
Yes.
my hand will shift, and I'll go to close another key, and guess what? I got a finger stuck under it, and the key doesn't close.
Oh
So
my
that
gosh.
doesn't sound very good. Plus, you pinch your fingers in there too. So it's an
Oh my gosh.
odd thing. So you know, I thought
It
about maybe
is, and
I'm sorry, what were you
yeah,
saying?
I will tell people sometimes. I was saying that I sometimes I just want to make a quick comment. Sometimes I'll get a lot of questions about if there's pain involved in dystonia and in focal dystonia, and the thing I say is like there isn't pain like people would think. When I say pain, usually I think of like, well, for embouchure dystonia, it's like, oh, if you have an overuse injury, usually we'll have swelling in the upper lip, kind of like tingles in our upper lip, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of this strenuous pain going on in our muscles, and it hurts. But with dystonia, there isn't that type of pain. But it is painful in the sense that when our symptoms get to that height where it's just like so much involuntary contraction going on,
Mm-hmm.
it is very much like a muscle spasm in your leg almost, and it can be painful, not as painful as in like your calf, not nearly as painful as that,
Right.
but it is painful in the sense that it's like this tension that it's like, oh my gosh, this tension is going to wreak havoc on my jaw joint, or this tension is going to wreak
Right.
havoc on my wrist,
Right.
because you're just trying to work through it, and it takes so much physical effort to even to get that relaxation going on. And again, when I say relaxation, a lot of people say, dystonia is just all rehabilitating from dystonia is just all about
Yeah.
relaxation, but that's not it. It's so much deeper than that.
Right.
It's so much more than that. So I think the main thing when we describe dystonia, it's hard to get across to others who don't understand it. When we say relaxation or we say these things, it's like seeing the tip of the iceberg. It's not just,
Right. Right.
oh, I'm just thinking about relaxing, and then I do that over time and I eventually relax. It takes work. I mean, it's
Right.
really more than that. Way
But
more than that.
you talked about the spasm and stuff like that. There's so many involuntary contractions and things that are going on with the stony when you go to move them, when you go to move the muscle, when you go to move it, your brain signals to move it. It's doing 16 other things that it shouldn't be doing to get that one thing to move. And so for me, fatigue set in very very fast. It very quickly. I'll get fatigued about doing the most minute tasks. So that affects me for exercising things like that. Like I wanted to ride a bicycle, right? But I couldn't aim my foot into the pedal. you know, clip my foot into the toe thing or get
Oh
my
my
foot in the
gosh.
toe clips. So I had to stop riding the bike. Because I couldn't get my leg to do that thing. Especially if you're riding in traffic and you got to stop. You got to like get your foot out of the clips. You can't do it fast. So I had to stop. I had to stop that. It affects a little different things, But fatigue for me was a very, very good thing. Like, very. Thank God I have a good neighbor who has a snow plow who plow our driveway for us. Because if I had to shovel it, I couldn't do it.
Oh,
For 5 minutes, it'd be like, the fatigue would just start, kicking in, and then I would feel it. Then when my legs would start to collapse on me and stuff like that. It's not. It for me. It gets the fatigue gets it gets into everything. It's not a matter of like, well, don't let it get to you. It gets
yeah,
to you. You know.
yeah, and it really does. And I think a good example is that, especially in cases of like generalized dystonia, which is much different than focal dystonia, but it affects the whole body. And I'll be actually doing a live stream with Catherine Briner, who is a horn player, next Wednesday, and she has both focal dystonia and general dystonia. So it affects her entire body as well, which is rare. Just like in your case, it's rare to have it in so many areas. But I can imagine, I get tired from just this one area of playing. I can't imagine having it in both limbs and the embouchure and affecting the neck, or just all of that. It would be exhausting.
Yeah, it's not, I'm not to be like a martyr, but it's a lot of things you have to just go through. So I just try to take it as I can, and learn from it and do something like, one thing, when I went back to Boston in September, it rekindled my desire to do things. So I stopped back in Berkeley and I saw some old teachers and stuff like that, and that was really great. But it also got me involved in. I took a couple classes, took some classes at Berkeley online, so that was really good. Did a nice big band arranging thing that was really good. I did now I'm doing an orchestration course, so it was just good for that, and it really did kind of get me out of that. It changed the focus of not being able to do your hand, play your instruments and do this. It changed the focus a little bit into a nice learning experience, which I was very happy about. So I have something new to work on, and now with people being home all the time, I have more time to write and do things. So I can work at that. And now I'm taking this one class. There's actually 14 people in class, and there's only about 4 people from the United States in the class. There's and they're all over the place. So and it's just good to be able to kind of be with these good. And there's some very good arranged composers in this class. So it's gonna be challenging. It's gonna be fun it'll be fun for me. I like the challenge of that, the composition stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you in just being able to compose and have another area of music that you can really dive into. Some of us don't have that, but the ones that do, it's just really rewarding to be able to, I don't know like what you're like, but I feel like a sense of like, I want to give back to the music community for all it has given me. And, when you have those experiences, it's life-changing, having those friendships with musicians, being a part of that community, and you just want to give back as much as you can through whatever means possible. And I just think it's awesome that you're able to compose, keep doing an area of music that also you're passionate about as well.
Right. Well, I'm grateful, like what you were talking about, giving back, and I look back at my career and I think about, well, maybe I wasn't that good, maybe I wasn't that, did this, did that, but then I look at where I was and what I had done and who I was with, and you had to have, be decent to get to do what I did, and have the comments that Phil would give me and Joe would give me, and tell me, like Phil said, you could play in my band any day, and this is when my chops were going downhill still, when you go for the Berkeley, they give you a performance test when you get in there, and they're like graded like 1 through 7. So my skills were eroding, but I scored 6.5. Other people, performance majors, were getting 3s. So you're still, there. So I have to look back at that. I look back at it, and Joe Viola respected me as a player, and so that was a wonderful thing that I have that. So I don't have any recordings of me playing, but I had that respect. So I have to remember those things that I did that. I could have went to Juilliard, but I did that. I was like, the instructor said, "You want to go here? I'll take you here." What I did as a flute player, what I did as a saxophone player, what I did playing in the pit, pit bands that I played in. So, listen to the radio or something like that, or go to a show. It's like I could do that. Like I wish I could still be able to do that. That was kind of my plan was, to once I get out of service, would do pit work, because that's what I enjoyed more than anything, was playing in a pit. I had no. I wasn't even thinking about composing, but it did afford me an opportunity to do that. So hopefully all my chops will get to the point where I trust them, and I have kind of confidence I had as a player, as a composer. So I mean, I have CDs that I did for healing music, and it's nothing. They're good. They're good, and then people who use them but it's a different thing. It's taking sounds and creating sounds and ambiances and stuff like that. It's different than what for an orchestra, whatever. So it's a whole different thing for that. So
Well, yeah, and you're and it's hard too because you get so attached to your primary instrument or the instruments that you have the most success on because it is like your voice. It
right,
feels like it's your voice, and when you lose that, it's very hard. And over time, it's kind of sad because we do tend to forget. Like we look back on the past and we're like, did I really do that? Was I actually a good player? I've gone through that too, and I've heard of other musicians do that too. And I even saw someone go so far to ask a friend, and they'd be like, "Was I actually a good player?" And his friend was like, "Yes, you were." It's
yeah,
just it's hard to look back on the past and kind of give ourselves the credit that we deserve. Um, because we're like, well, who remembers what I've been able to do, but
right,
it's still you still have that experience and you have that
right,
credibility,
right,
and you deserve that respect. Even if as an injured musician we still deserve kudos for what we gone through going through
right,
the ropes that others have been able to have gone through as well, especially you being a professional and being able to get to that level of playing and studying with master teachers that are so well known. It's just a sign that
yeah,
you're not just some Joe Schmo that didn't know what he was doing, and that's the
right,
case for a lot of musicians who have dystonia. We aren't just these amateur players that sucked at our instrument, or we didn't
right,
practice, or we didn't put in the time and the effort, and we didn't get any type of awards or any type of praise for our playing throughout training
right.
or a career as well.
Right. So I think one of the
Hmm.
worst things that for me was like I got hurt when I was in Newport, and wasn't so I couldn't play for a while, and then just at that same time there was new band directors came in. Sometimes the people rotate in and out, and the new band director came in, and he didn't know what I could play. Like he didn't know me from anything. He was just hearing a flawed musician. He didn't know anything about my past or whatever. So he said, "Well, you know what? I don't really like your playing. It's not what you play; it's the way you play it. Something's just not right." So why don't you think about going to a different band? So that was like, oh, that was the first time in my life that anybody had ever said to me, "We don't like your playing." Maybe had somebody said, "Oh, you tend to rush. You might be this or that. You play this thing. Could you play it a little quieter or something like that?" But nobody had ever said to me, "You're not good." That was the first time I'd heard that, and then
Oh my
then it
gosh.
was like, pff, after
Ugh.
that, it took a while to get that back. So, but maybe it could be just some of the way they said it,
Wow. Oh
you
my
know.
gosh.
So that was
I'm so
that was bad for
sorry.
me. That was something that I didn't hit from that wasn't good for me. So I kind of carried that one for a while.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
but sometimes it's hard to
Yeah,
erase things from your
that
mind's
hurts deep.
eye, you know. But it could be just the
Yeah, I'm
way
so
they say
sorry
it.
that you had to.
Well, it's just one of those
Oh,
things. So,
oh my
but
gosh.
but again, it's like
Yeah,
you don't
it's
know that. You hear somebody play, you don't know what they've been through to get to the point where they're playing. So, like I said, the one of
yeah. I
the
had a horn player friend that had dystonia, or he has embouchure dystonia also, and he said something really kind of stuck with me also. He said, if I could tell musicians who don't have dystonia one thing, it would be, just kind of be more aware of the musicians around you that are struggling, because maybe that musician that's sitting next to you, or an orchestra that even if that you've played beside them for years and they're
right,
struggling, maybe it's not something so simple as they're having a bad day. It could be
right,
something worse that they're not talking to you about, and to just kind of have a little more sympathy for each other, because we
right,
tend to get into this, when you get into that up in that level of playing, you tend to deal with a lot of people who are nitpicky about everything in everyone's playing, and they kind of have to be, but at the same time it's like, you might be sitting in orchestra and somebody, you miss a note and somebody looks back at you with this glare, and it's like, you just can't
right,
judge people, simply based on, just their playing abilities all the time. I mean, it's
right,
hard not to, but
Right.
Just to have a little more respect for people who you notice are going through issues would be nice, you
Right.
know.
And that was the last thing. My last band was a Pacific Fleet band in Pearl Harbor. And again, I couldn't conduct. I was a higher rank. So I put as a higher rank in Pearl, one higher rank in the band. It was listed, somebody was supposed to be conducting. I couldn't do that. My playing was slipping. So I was kind of losing respect for people. The only people who knew me, or people I would go out and do a reception with when I was just playing just the small group that I would be in, then being a leader for that, and I had that respect because they knew my playing. They could see the snippets of something that was good there. But as far as I would lose, I wouldn't be able to hold anybody's respect as a player at that point in time. Especially if they had, especially again, like if we were talking about levels, like we're talking our cheese analogy. That if they're only aware of this one thing and it's not, they don't see the other things that are in there. The parts that were good, they're only just seeing that little part that didn't stick out. But there's so many elements that go into playing an instrument and being a musician that if you don't know what they are and just go out and push a button on a keyboard and say, ooh, that sounded good. Ooh, that's pretty, you know. It's not the same, It's like there's so much more to it, I don't know. I went to see.
Oh yeah.
Uh, there's a man named Kenny Werner. Have you ever heard of Kenny Werner? He talks about playing instruments, but
Uh,
he wrote a book about it, about what it is like just being able to just play and not get your body out of it. So I saw him in New York. He was a thing that Berkeley sponsored. I forgot the name. I cannot remember the name of his book right now, but it's kind of roots to the thing. But he was talking about a movie in the '80s called, I think it was called Green Card, where the piano player just walks into a house drunk and sits at the piano and goes, and everybody's like, "Oh, you play! How wonderful you play!" Just that, and you're just like, "Oh, you're so good." But man, you don't know if the guy could play or not. It's just a funny scene. But if that's all it was, if I could just
yeah.
BS somebody or BS myself that's playing, and maybe I could do, So maybe a lot of people are out there just BSing themselves that they know what they're doing, and somebody's paying them for it too. So they're not. But it's just. It's a big part of. I miss my instruments. I miss playing. I miss it. I miss it big time. But the composing helps, and this is a newfound thing to be able to help other people out there. It's wonderful. So did you see we had a
Yeah.
comment? We had a
Thank you
comment
so
about
much for doing this.
yeah
I
yeah
mean, yeah, it's awesome that you're doing this, and I'm just so happy that you've been able to share your story with us and your journey. And I always tell everyone this. I would love to have you on here again. It'd be so great, just to
just let me
share
know.
more information if you want to, because it just seems whenever we talk about dystonia, it's it's not something we can talk about in just an hour. It's like literally something you could talk about for weeks, because it's just there's so much involved.
Right.
But I really loved having you on here. And before we go here in a second, I just want to address some of the comments. So I saw that James Nickel, who is a horn player, he wrote in the comments about his wife, Juliana, who is a flute player. And I have contacted Juliana a lot because we kind of know each other through Facebook really well. And she's the first person to have deep brain stimulation surgery through NIH, the National Institute of Health, and she's been able to recover her playing abilities, but she has focal hand dystonia on flute, and so she's kind of been she has a blog which she's kind of hesitant to share sometimes, but but I love when she does, because she writes a lot about how she's feeling this new sensations as she recovers, and just the journey of going into surgery and the fears and all of that. And it's really great because she's been able to kind of prove that this disorder is not just something that is simple. It's very complex. It's
Right.
If you have to go through brain surgery to get 100% recovery, I mean, that has to say something about this disorder. It's not, it's the reason it's called the career ender. And I just want to give a shout out to her and her husband, because for being public about that, and I'm just really proud of what she's done as well. And thank you, James, for writing about your wife in the chat as well. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's insidious. It just gets you get you one thing. If it's so you trip fool it one way and it goes and finds another way to get to find it to get at you. It's very it's sneaky. You might think you cover it with one thing, but then you find something else will come out to get it. I'll get it in one hand and I'll master something, and then something else it'll say, "Ha, I got you." Like if I just sit and play piano a little bit, and it'll be fine. But once that little bit of emotion starts, and I get a little feel good about what's going on, maybe I can't have an expectation about it. And I always talk to other people, don't have expectations, you won't be disappointed. So, but I have expectations when I play, and then I'll get disappointed. So maybe I should go through it without an expectation and see what happens. I don't know.
Well, it's really hard when it spreads to other areas of your body because, I think I was reading a research article where it showed, only 25% of the musicians that have hand dystonia, it spreads to writer's cramp in their hand. And so it seems like a large percentage to us, but it's actually a pretty low percentage in general, the general population.
Right.
Yeah, when it spreads to other areas, it's like I would completely understand how it's like even more, have more fears of like it could possibly spread to other areas, even if
Right.
I try recovering.
Right. But that writer's cramp. One of the things that I found is like sometimes they'll see focal dystonia and they'll put parentheses writer's cramp. So that kind of trivializes it right there too. And it's not a trivial thing, but it's all you just had writer's cramp. We'll put the pencil down for 5 minutes and maybe you don't get writer's cramp again. It's not that. So that's kind of when I see that writer's cramp, that's a little hot button for me. It's not writer's cramp. That seems to me like that really trivializes the whole thing. There's a lot more to it than that. And just, and you can't put the horn down for 5 minutes. You put the horn down for 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes of not practicing. You got to get, how much time do you take out of your day to practice? And the other thing is like my old adage, like practice makes permanent. Doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. And we adjusted things that kind of compensate for the dystonia, and we wound up creating even more things that trigger something even worse. Another bad habit, another habit that this muscle memory takes over, and it's not the right thing. But then dystonia, that muscle memory gets altered somehow. Dystonia finds a way to smash that, and we find another way to get around. So next time we get like 8 different ways to get to try to do one thing. We've got so many different ways that we try to short circuit it. So it gets you in every little aspect, and it's just about every little thing. So
yeah, it's very unpredictable, and the fact that we still need a lot of research on it. It's hard to predict like what will happen, if things will get worse. I think that's the biggest fear of musicians when they go into rehabilitation is, am I making this worse? Is it going to get better and stick? Is it going to stay? For some people it does, for some people it doesn't.
Right.
And it's very hard to navigate that because it's just, such a crippling disorder and so complex to get through in every single stage. It's just, and then some players have, it varies in level of severity. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. My brother-in-law is cooking something, but but yeah, there's the different levels of severity, and so some musicians, it's like they might not have it as severe, so they have a higher chance of recovering abilities, or if they're so lucky to catch it during onset.
Right, because that's the thing. I didn't know what was going on, so there was no rehab for me. I had no idea what was happening. It wasn't until like I say, some doctor 10 years later said, "I think you have dystonia," and I had to figure it out on my own. I had to tell the doctors I have dystonia. This is because everything on a musician's dystonia checklist I have. And every way that you get it, I had all at once. The injury, the minor injury, the excessive practice, the change of instruments, the kinesthetic nature of my playing. Boom, right there. Perfect storm for it,
Yeah,
So.
And that's so tough too, because it's like, with the injury too as well, because, you read about the musicians that have had injured hands, like Leon Fischer on piano, and even Robert Schumann, the first case of focal hand dystonia, that we look back on. Injury to the hands, and it's just it sucks because if you get hurt and then you get dystonia, it's just like double the trouble having to handle that.
Yeah, it just triggers the whole thing, and you're trying to make up for your time that you didn't practice to begin with, and so you have the excessive time practicing because you just lost 8 weeks of playing. Your embouchure, it goes, it goes away. You have to
Hmm.
because we have to work at this. We have to work at it our whole life to be able to play and to you know. So
Yeah, it's a
again,
paradoxical in the sense that it's like with dystonia, it's like the more you try to practice, the worse it gets.
yeah,
But we need to practice to try to get this muscle memory going, but it's just non-existent at the
yeah,
time. So uh, it's very difficult.
hmm
Well, Frank, I'm so happy to have you on here. I'm gonna have to let you go just because we're gonna
okay,
eat lunch here. But I am so
okay,
happy to talk to you today. I'm so happy that you shared your story. So when we leave here, what will happen is the stream will upload on my timeline and save.
okay,
You can share that if you want to. I'll also go ahead and I haven't told anyone else this, but I'll download it to YouTube and then share the link with you so it's more accessible for you.
okay,
And yeah, if anybody comes on here and asks any questions, I'll go ahead and send you those questions
okay.
to answer. And yeah, I just really am happy that you shared your story. If you have anything else to add, you can add it in the comment sections as well afterwards too. Um, just thank you so much for sharing your story. I really
Well,
honor your journey and what you've been through,
all right,
and your
thank you.
credibility as a musician as well, for serving in the Army and the Navy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did 1 day in the Air Force too.
oh my gosh.
The
Thank you for,
Air Force band came to Hawaii, and one of the saxophone players got sick. So he called the Navy band and said, "Could you send somebody to sight read?" So I went there, stuck on the Air Force uniform, and did the job, sight read the show. And so I had one
oh
day
my
in the Air
God.
Force. So
Well,
on top of
thank
that,
you for triple serving
thank
our
you.
nation.
Okay, so you're welcome. Thank you for doing this because this is something that people don't know about, and it's just dystonia. What is that? What is that? It's well, we got writer's cramp. You got more than writer's cramp. You got a lifelong thing to deal with that ends your career. So it's not
Yeah.
writer's cramp.
Yeah, it is very, it's a complex thing to describe to people who don't have it, but I think the
Hmm.
more we speak out about it, they'll begin to see the different layers involved
Right,
in it and the
right.
complexities here and there. And I'm
Hmm.
hoping that eventually they'll be able to kind of understand, what we're going through.
Right.
Uh, but again, thank you so much for being on
You're
today.
welcome.
And I hope you stay safe and stay healthy.
You
And
too.
hopefully this virus will pass in time.
Yeah,
So,
we're staying in. We're not going anywhere except had one scary thing at the grocery store last week, but we're in for another 2 weeks before we have to do it again. So
yeah. All
all
right,
right. Well,
Frank.
take
Well, it's
care.
been such a good day. Thank you so much. I will see you
Thank you.
soon. Bye.
So long.